A shocking moment during a massage infidelity story. It is said that certain moments etch themselves into our minds eternally, clinging to us like shadows. Though it feels fresh, it has lingered in the air for 2 years since that fateful day. It had been 2 years since everything changed, and what was meant to be a simple beach outing with my son took on a life of its own. Leonard, my husband Phoenix, often found himself caught in the web of work, leaving family moments behind. I had learned to navigate this altitude with grace. Yet, on that day, there was an unusual quality to the air, a sense of something different. As we found our place, the sun enveloped us in its warmth, perhaps a touch too fervently, and I leaned back, surrendering to the moment. At last, freed from the clamor of the world, I called upon Leon to help me with the soothing oil on my back. I acted without a moment's pause. He is my son, my child. What reason could there be for me to do otherwise? At first it seemed trivial, just his hands guiding me along the way. Yet, without a doubt, I acknowledged it. I enclosed his essence, delving deeper and diminishing, and I refrained from interfering with what his trio was up to. I now stand in the way. You think you possess wisdom, you might feel you grasp the essence of your family, yet there lies a singular moment capable of unraveling everything for me. It happened on that beach, forever changing the course of my life. Phoenix and I had shared over 15 years of marriage. Those who know us would paint a picture of the perfect couple, residing in a charming and commendable home. Children and a stable life, yet the cracks linger unseen until one is confined within the walls. The emptiness goes unnoticed, dear friend, as one becomes the solitary soul bearing it for years on end. Phoenix's journey enveloped his very essence, as he tirelessly dedicated himself to his craft. I held back from interrupting him on weekends and holidays, as he assured himself that his extra hours and dedication were for the benefit of our family's well-being. Yet, as time passed, it became increasingly clear that his priorities were shifting. In Tenorville, one must ponder the worth of a house that stands empty, devoid of the warmth of human presence. As I called Percival to him upon his return, he barely acknowledged my presence, no longer inquiring about my feelings, sizes, or needs. Our conversations had shifted, now primarily revolving around bills. Gross Rias had tales to tell, and in the company of children, he cherished Leonard and his younger sister Isa. Yet, even amidst their laughter and joy, he lingered like a shadow, present in body, but his heart and spirit seemed to drift far away. I sat at the table opposite him, pondering whether he felt my presence that morning. I remember waiting in the kitchen as Phoenix hurried out the door, grabbing his briefcase, kissing the top of Isa's head, and casting a brief, apologetic glance my way. "Sorry, Freya, I can't make it today, an issue arose at work." I refrained from engaging in any argument, merely nodding as I always did. My throat tightened, but I reassured myself that it was okay, leaning into that moment. Leonard was 16 years old, tall and slender, and I haven't seen him lately. He had the same brown eyes as his father, and though his face sparkled with a certain light, he remained silent even when I shared my thoughts with him. It would only be the two of us. I sensed that I had grown accustomed to his father's absences, as he merely shrugged and cast his eyes at the bags while accompanying me to our vehicle. I watched him in the passenger seat throughout the journey, gazing out the window with a sense of wonder. I couldn't help but grin. He was maturing rapidly, and at times, I found myself pondering the changes unfolding before me. As I pondered whether I would blink and lose him, the journey to the shore stretched on, feeling endless. My thoughts wandered, as they often did, to Phoenix, reflecting on the many engagements we once. Our shared experiences, especially those long movie nights, linger in my mind. Are you still there? Press 1 to let me know you're listening. Those leisurely strolls and aimless adventures were all for the sake of enjoyment, sparked by a simple desire for amusement. Thoughts linger on his gentle touches, and the way his eyes light up my being. For years, sensations had slipped through my fingers, leaving me empty and untouched by emotions. Feeling overlooked, we finally arrived at our destination, and Leonard was there to help me carry the burden. With bags in hand, I ventured to a secluded Arabai. As I arranged the towels, uncertainty washed over me. Suddenly, I felt an undeniable urge to strike up a conversation with him. Perhaps it was his presence that drew me in, being the only one there. Perhaps I was in need of a companion, or maybe just someone to lend an ear. It's a joy to step outside, though I find myself at odds with him. He tried to appear cheerful, nodding while brushing his hair back with his fingers. Yes. Ah, dear mother, how delightful it is. I found myself reclining on the towel, surrendering to the sun's warm embrace as it seeped into my skin. I lingered in that moment, allowing the golden rays to wash over me, seeking solace and respite from the weight of recent troubles. Years passed, and even if it was just for a moment, I recalled the oil and turned to Leonard, asking, "Can you assist?" As I embarked on this journey, I sought answers about my past, a past that eluded my grasp. He cast a fleeting glance my way, his eyes flickering with intent as he reached for the bottle I held. I leaned back, my gaze fixed on the towel, and waited for what was to come. As we moved forward, the initial touch was gentle and careful, his hands hovering as if to prevent any harm. A smile crossed my face, reminiscent of the days when he was small and would grasp my hand. Across the street, his hands were so tiny back then that I could push a bit harder. I informed him, my voice steady, that it was acceptable. He listened, and his hands grew stronger as he applied the oil. Thomas's hands glided over my back, and I closed my eyes, surrendering to the warmth of his rhythmic touch. For a fleeting moment, I let myself bask in the sensation, a rare gift after such a long time without any contact. The realization of this absence hit me deeply, echoing in the silence of my heart. Then I wished token ledge, however I soon felt descend slowly and cautiously along the curve of my back, my breath edged in my throat, and though I opened my mouth to articulate a response, no words emerged, leaving me in silence. I reassured myself that it was okay. He said he was only assisting such a thing. I found myself doubting, yet I was not. His hands lingered momentarily at the boundary of my towel, and I sensed his uncertainty. I felt my own emotions rise, and rather than halting him, I said, "It's acceptable, you may proceed." The words hung ominously in the air, and as soon as they escaped my lips, I realized their irreversible weight. Leonard remained still and silent, a tension hanging in the air. I squeezed my eyes shut, acutely aware of his hands resting lower than they should. My heart raced, a wild drumbeat that felt as though it might betray me. I could have told him to stop, but the frantic energy between us wouldn't allow for such a pause. Even in that moment, I felt the urgency of the situation pressing down on me. I find myself in a haze of uncertainty, pondering whether it was the weight of loneliness, or perhaps an overwhelming need for validation that led me to that moment. The moral implications seemed to fade away, and indifference washed over me like the tide on that beach in Sodom. Everything I knew shattered, leaving behind a landscape forever altered. If you, dear listener, can see through this tale, I am grateful for your presence amidst the chaos. I recognize the clamor of this experience, and I appreciate your willingness to navigate it with me. If you find this video captivating or think someone might connect with my tale, please take a moment to like and subscribe. Your support greatly helps me continue sharing such narratives. After that day at the beach, a significant change unfolded that I couldn't overlook. The emotions I felt and the sights I observed in Leonard's gaze were not just passing moments, they lingered. Each time our eyes met, there was an undeniable depth in him, an indescribable essence that resonated deeply. Hesitant to reveal my thoughts, I tried to push them aside as I returned home that evening. Isn't it true that we do everything we can to keep up appearances? I set about preparing supper, casually asking Leonard about his day at school while I folded laundry late into the night, my hands moving almost automatically. Trembling throughout, I found myself repeatedly revisiting the events involving him. The way he lingered created a tension that I despised, resenting him for inducing such sick feelings about my own son. Phoenix remained oblivious, returning home as usual, his tie askew and worry etched on his face. He kissed my cheek out of habit, a mere remnant of what it once was. After a long day, I inquired, anticipating a lively exchange, yet he merely grunted and nodded, already en route to the living room. This was a recurring pattern. His presence felt like an afterthought, rendering me invisible. One summer night, I lay in bed, fixated on the ceiling while Phoenix slept softly. The house was tranquil, yet my mind was tumultuous. I found myself lost in a whirlwind of thoughts about Leonard. I felt the weight of my emotions pressing down on me. I recognized the inappropriateness of my feelings and understood that I must put an end to whatever this was before it spiraled into something darker and lonelier. I longed for the connection, the sensation that once enveloped me during those days in Gackenledge, as time slipped away unnoticed. Leonard remained silent, yet his silence sang louder than words. He motivated me in a way that felt as if he lingered closer, watching me while I cooked, cleaned, or sat alone on the couch at night. I allowed it to unfold. I didn't stop him, refraining from his restraint. Thus, the next weekend arrived, marked by an oppressive atmosphere. The heat enveloped the home, making it feel stifling. The Phoenix had taken its leave, towed away on a final ship, leaving Leonard and me behind on Sugan. I asked him if he wanted to return to the beach, just the two of us. I'm not quite sure why I suggested this. Perhaps I thought that being outside would do us good. As I sought to clarify my thoughts, perhaps I was challenging myself to unravel the complexities of the journey. This time, however, Leonard sat without his headphones, his gaze fixed on the window, his knee bouncing with restless energy. I felt an urge to break the silence, to say something, anything, that might disrupt his stillness. Yet, each time I tried to speak, the words caught in my throat, refusing to escape as I arrived at the moment. On that beach, it was the most deserted I had ever seen. The vivid blue of the ocean stretched endlessly before me, and the gentle breeze caressed my face. I rearranged the towels, a task that Leonard had helped me with, though I hadn't asked for his assistance. I hoped for some oil on my back, but instead, I remained still, eyes closed, feigning tranquility. Yet, even with my eyes shut, I could feel his scrutiny, a presence that lingered just beyond my closed eyelids. He observed me, marking the actual turning point of that awkward afternoon. We chose to cleanse ourselves at the beach showers before our departure. The intention was to swiftly remove the sand from our skin. However, something inexplicable unfolded when we arrived at the. On the shores, Leonard stepped into the water first, letting it cascade down his back. I watched him for a moment from the side before the urge to join him became irresistible. I quickly shed my outer garments and positioned myself beside him, the cool water refreshing against my skin. Leonard looked at me with surprise, and I couldn't tell if it was a joyful or curious expression that crossed his face. In the midst of uncertainty, he chose silence, a quietude that spoke volumes. I caught a fleeting glimpse of him, while she examined him closely, suggesting he should also shed his shorts, emphasizing the need for proper rinsing. I found myself pondering the reasons behind my words. Was it a display of control, an attempt to halt the unfolding moment, or perhaps a means of assessing both him and myself? He hesitated for a moment before voicing his discomfort, removing his shoes, and thus we were left together, alone in the water, as the rain fell relentlessly, washing away everything but our raw emotions. I turned my gaze from him, whispering softly into the storm. In a moment of quiet tension, I sought his assistance, and his hands, gentle as they were, stirred something deep within me. The air around us thickened, charged with an unspoken energy, and when he touched my waist, I felt a sudden rigidity take hold. The sound of water cascaded around us, drowning out everything else. I could have turned away, could have stopped this moment from unfolding, but instead, I leaned in closer, guiding his hands to my chest. He did not pull back. What happened next defies explanation, a fleeting moment, a blur that lingered in the air between us. Born from a deep-seated need, loneliness intertwined with an unnamed emotion, it surged forth with an urgency that was anything but gentle. It was fervent, flawed in every way, and I found myself unable to halt its course, nor did I wish to. When it finally subsided, we stood together, a cascade of feelings washing over us, erasing grievances yet leaving the truth intact. He embraced him, a gesture of warmth that had been absent for years, and I mirrored that sentiment. We lingered in the aftermath, the air thick with unspoken words, as we dried ourselves off, our backs still damp as we returned to the car. I observed Leonard, his face flushed, a surge of movement within him. In that moment, I understood. I had irrevocably altered everything we had known, crossing into a realm of uncharted answers, a blend of emotions that had never before graced the surface of our sea. As the journey home began, a sense of invigoration washed over me, yet a weight hung in the air, heavy and oppressive. I felt constricted, as if the very atmosphere bore down on us with hubris. My hands gripped the steering wheel, a friendly attempt to focus on the road ahead, but my thoughts swirled in chaos. Leonard was there, his presence palpable, his hands and body a reminder of the gravity of our recent actions. I stole glances at him in the passenger seat. He was tense, his gaze fixed out the window, his face flushed and jaw clenched. Then, unexpectedly, he broke the silence. "Mom," he said, his voice low and tentative. I turned my gaze away, unable to respond, though I caught fragments of his mention of the recent occurrence, and my heart raced. For a fleeting moment, I found myself adrift in a haze of uncertainty, contemplating the weight of unspoken truths. The conversation shifted, yet the pretense of ignorance felt futile, especially in light of our recent choices. I took a shaky breath and admitted my lack of understanding, a truth that felt painfully close to the surface. I was oblivious to the events that had unfolded or the motivations behind them. All I grasped was that everything had irrevocably changed. Silence enveloped us until we reached the driveway. I switched off the car, but neither of us moved. Leonard finally looked at me, really looked, and in that moment, I saw something in his eyes that sent a chill through me. It wasn't confusion, guilt, or shame, it was longing. How long had he kept these feelings hidden? He requested his words to stir something deep within me, as I had been pondering the same subject. I gazed at him, and it felt as if something had shattered inside me. I mused that perhaps we lingered too long in silence, enveloped in darkness, weighing whether to let go of the past and fade into normalcy. Yet, Leonard had other intentions. Before I could open the door, he leaned in and kissed me. It was gentle, tentative, as if he feared I might pull away. But I didn't. I reciprocated, and then lost myself, uncertain whether it was the solitude of years gone by or the intensity of Leonard's gaze that had drawn me in. It had been an eternity since I felt the warmth of another, but there he was, Leonard, enveloping me in his embrace as if our bodies were destined to intertwine. A rush of vitality surged through me, a sense of being truly seen for the first time, as if nothing else in the world mattered. Time slipped away during our connection, and when we finally pulled apart, I barely remembered how we had arrived at the door. All that lingered was the memory of his hand in mine, and the electric silence that hung between us, a palpable tension that needed no words. Once inside, it was as if we had been holding back for far too long, and now the floodgates had opened. The days that followed were a haze, filled with his presence, as he sought every chance to brush against me or catch my eye when he thought no one was watching. I found myself battling the urge to pull away, to retreat into myself. To end whatever this was felt like an impossible task. Each time I held him, I sensed the same desolation, as if we were mere reflections of one another, mirroring a void that echoed the same hollow emptiness. I found it impossible to refuse, nor did I wish to. Tonight, I would lie in bed beside him, contemplating the shared connection, attuned to the rhythm of his breathing. My thoughts would drift to Leonard in the adjacent room, recalling the sensation of his hands, and how he revitalized my spirit. As I closed my eyes, curling up in my chest like a serpent, I was acutely aware that this wasn't sustainable. I knew it was wrong, yet I felt powerless to change it. Cease the rising tension that had been building between us, a tension that grew more intense with each passing day until it reached a breaking point. This moment unfolded late one evening, while I was at work in Phoenix. I recall the scene vividly. Leonard and I were in the kitchen, washing dishes, a distraction from the storm brewing within. My instincts kicked in, sensing his presence lurking behind me. Turning around, I found him there, just as he had been on the beach. "Leonard," I whispered softly, hoping to caution him, but he moved closer, so near that I could feel his breath on my neck. "Mom," he murmured, "I can't stop thinking about it." I felt paralyzed, my heart racing so fiercely that I feared it might burst. I wanted to tell him to stop, to retreat to his room, and leave me be, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Instead, I simply gazed at him and spoke. There was a phrase I should have held back, for I found myself unable to resist. In that moment, everything unraveled and Leonard kissed me again, with an intensity born of desperation. I returned his kiss, casting aside the moral dilemmas, and the reality of Phoenix and the life we had built. My sole focus was Leonard, my son, the only person who had reignited my sense of purpose since that day on the beach, a feeling that had largely eluded me since then. I am left uncertain if it will ever return. Leonard and I have crossed a boundary that cannot be erased, remnants of my attempts to persuade him lingering in the air, marking the beginning of a new chapter. A fleeting moment has transformed into a heavy burden of shame that I struggle to navigate. Each day, I witness my husband and daughter, seemingly unaware of the cracks forming around us. Their focus on their own lives leaves them blind to my decline, or perhaps I have simply become skilled at hiding it. Yet, I know deep down that this situation cannot persist forever. Secrets, like shadows, will eventually emerge, and when they do, their impact will be profound. Despite all my efforts to prevent them, I have repeatedly convinced myself, though this is erroneous, that Leonard deserves superior treatment, and that I deserve better as well. Yet, each time he touches me or gazes at me as if I'm the sullying devil in existence, he invigorates me in a way I have not experienced in years, perhaps ever. This is the reality I must endure. I am uncertain how to resolve this issue, or if I can resolve it at all, which is why I am sharing my narrative in the hope that Samia may possess a solution. I find myself in a predicament I have not previously contemplated. Perhaps you can help. Assist me in extricating myself from this turmoil before it becomes a radical mess. I implore you to share any counsel you may possess, particularly if you have experienced a similar situation, or know someone young who has. I am eager to hear from you. Additionally, let this serve as a cautionary tale. Solitude can lead one to unforeseen depths. Do not allow yourself to become lost as I have. Let your universe integrate before you comprehend the situation. Because once you transgress that boundary, there is an order. Thank you for your attention. Express your opinions, like this video if you found it beneficial, and subscribe for further content. I need reassurance that I'm not alone. Sometimes, the most significant wounds to trace are not those inflicted against others, but rather those we perpetuate against ourselves.